Mormonism, yeah, that's like a made-up thing, right? They just say, "Oh, Jesus is going to come back in America." Like someone just made that up, and a bunch of idiots just believe that. We want to live in prosperity. We want to live in peace. We don't want to be living in tunnels like Hamas. We
Yeah.
don't want to be bombed. We don't want to be living with suicide bombers. We don't want to cover head to toe. Like, what the fuck? However, you need to be paranoid because, if you're not paranoid enough, there's always someone around the corner that will fuck you up, or some ideology or something.
And we are back. What's up, everybody? I got a very special guest today. His name is Younes. We're gonna mainly focus on. I don't want to get waste too much time on the intro, but we're gonna be talking about Islam, Israel, Palestine, axis of resistance. Let's start with maybe your journey in terms of where you come from, because you live in the UK now, but you're from Iran. Your upbringing, parenting, and just a little bit of that first, and then we'll go into what's going on now.
Well, I came from a relatively liberal family, so I wouldn't say anyone in my family was a hardcore Muslim. The only person that was a hardcore Muslim in my family was my granddad from my mom's side, and he was the loveliest guy ever. Like, he used to just wake up at 5 in the morning, pray. He never drank, he never smoked, he never cheated on his wife. He was married to my grandma for like 60 years. And, I never see him swear, say a bad word come out of his mouth. So people have to make this distinction that when I speak about Islam, I'm not talking about all Muslims. I'm speaking about Islam as an ideology. And I give you an example. Like, I do not agree with communism, but that doesn't mean anyone that's a communist is automatically a bad person. I do believe that Islam as an ideology is very dangerous. I think like it could be a brain virus, the same way the woke mind virus is a brain virus. And I think society can do better without it, even though I still think every single religion has its own flaws. No religion is 100% right, but at the same time, no religion is 100% wrong. You can learn from every single religion and incorporate it into your life, but don't put yourself in a box. And that's why I call myself a spiritual person.
Right, but what about in terms of because when you're a kid, everybody around you is Muslim. You're Muslim as well. Your family's Muslim. So, what was the process of like growing up in that environment where everybody's kind of like maybe in your business, or I don't know how it works exactly. And then at what point were you starting to think maybe this religion is not really working for me? Was there like an epiphany phase, or did you just go straight to like?
Well, look, let me just tell you something. A majority of Persians, Iranians, they're very open-minded people. And Islam was something that was forced on us 1,400 years ago. Our original religion is Zoroastrianism. We call it Zarathusht. And Zoroastrianism is a very open-minded, very fun religion. It's nothing like Islam. I would say it's like 180 degrees different to Islam. So I think Persians are very different from Arabs because they had their own religion, they had their own culture. Islam is something that came from the deserts of Arabia. And maybe at the time, it was useful. It was useful for the savages that used to kill their own daughters upon birth. So Islam came about and maybe civilized them a little bit. But then 1,400 years later, I just don't think we should be living by the norms and the rules set 1,400 years ago by Saudi, desert people that didn't know any better, right? So the epiphany for me was when I was a teenager. And ever since I was a kid, I was a very curious kid. I was quite disagreeable. So when someone told me do this or do that, I was like, why? Like, you have to give me an explanation. Like, you have to convince me in some way. Like, why shouldn't I do such a thing? Or why should I do such a thing? Like, you need to explain to me exactly why. So that was the personality trait that I had. I questioned everything and I was quite disagreeable. So you couldn't like lie to me or you couldn't force something upon me. When I was a teenager, I moved to the UK and I actually went to a Christian school here and I started like studying the Bible a little bit. And then I was like, well, the Bible says this, but then the Quran says that. Like, when I was a kid, I was taught this and then now they're teaching me that. So I was like, they both can't be correct.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but was there a reason why you guys left Iran? Was it like because of the revolution or?
Because Iran has ruined one of the most beautiful countries in the world. We had the revolution in 1979 in which a bunch of terrorists came and took over the country. And Iranian people have been struggling ever since. And that's why I'm kind of looking forward to a Trump's presidency, because I think he will either get rid or extremely weaken the Islamic Republic. I know the revolution can only take place from within and the Iranian people, but I think Israeli help and American help is greatly appreciated. I think Netanyahu, what he's done in the last 18 months, the way he's weakened the axis of evil, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and also, killing certain strategic Islamic Republic agents, such as Soleimani, such as Zahedi, such as a few others, and also destroying their air defenses, has put the Islamic Republic of Iran in a very weak position. And I think they are very close to collapsing, and that's why they want to make a deal. In terms of us, it's just the fact that, in Iran is oppression. It's like North Korea, or similar to North Korea. Like, we could have been South Korea, but then unfortunately we became North Korea, because in the 1970s, if you look at the history, like, Tehran was one of the most visited cities in the world. It was like what Dubai is now. Everyone used to go to Tehran. Everything was liberated. Women didn't have to wear the hijab. We had ski resorts. We had beaches. We had nightclubs. We had everything, right? Rich country, powerful culture. So a lot of Iranians have left Iran, not just us, but like tens of millions of Iranians have left Iran. And I'm sure you have a few of them in Canada. I don't know which.
I've met a bunch of Iranians here in my city, Montreal, and I'd say maybe 80% of them don't like the Iranian government. They just don't like the way it's run.
The 20%, the other 20%, you should ask them the question, like, if you like the Islamic Republic, then why did you leave? And I suspect the 20% that are there, because, the Canadian government under Trudeau was very close with the Islamic Republic. So he basically invited them to the country to come and invest their money. This is the hard-earned money of the Iranian people and the oil money of the Iranian people that these mullahs, bring out of the country, and they bring it and invest it in places like Canada. And I think hopefully all of that will change with Trudeau going. But to answer your question, I think, so we moved out, and when I was a teenager, I started studying, and I was an atheist for 10 years. This is like what you have to realize about me. I was an atheist for 10 years. I studied Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris and all these people. And I could say they were my idols. Like, I can almost recite them. Like, I almost memorize their whole books or whole debates, because I watched them so many times, But then I had a personal experience around the age of 24, 25. And I don't know if I can say it on this podcast, but it was a very deep psychedelic experience. And I realized that, God is real. God is an energy and a frequency and a vibration that flows through everything. We are a part of God. We have the spirit of God inside of us. They say you are not a drop in the ocean, you are ocean in a drop. And that's what I believe. I see God as a frequency, as a vibration, and as an energy. And he is definitely real. I just think different religions are different perspectives on spirituality in different time frames in history. None of them are 100% correct, but none of them are 100% wrong. And I think religious stories are metaphoric stories. They're not literal stories. They're metaphoric, and you can take metaphoric lessons from them. For example, my name, Younes, which is Jonah and the whale in the Bible, is about taking responsibility. Adam and Eve is about becoming conscious. And when you become conscious, you leave paradise. And 7 deadly sins, and so on and so forth. There are many stories, and there are deep psychological, metaphorical lessons that has value in it. And the problem I have with the atheist arguments that, all religion is bullshit, this is all made up. No, it's not. It's not. If you think of it literally, then yes, probably it is made up. But if you think about it metaphorically, then definitely not. Then there is infinite wisdom in the verses in the Bible, in the Torah, and even the Quran.
Okay, so sorry, just to get back to your the original line, you were saying that you started questioning Islam as you were growing up. You were meeting a bunch of people that were Christian, maybe atheists. Maybe you come across certain arguments you haven't heard before. And then was there like a process also in terms of like your family or your parents that are like just like, yo, is this guy even Muslim anymore? Like, what's going on with him?
As I said, look, my parents are very liberal. So I wouldn't even say my parents.
Oh, okay.
They believe in God. And, the thing is, because they grew up in a society where they couldn't speak any bad word about Islam.
Hmm.
So when you live in that kind of environment, you kind of have to pretend to other people that you're a Muslim. But deep down, my mom never prayed, my dad never prayed, uh, my grandparents did pray. So we came from that kind of culture, and I don't think that's uncommon in Iran. Actually, I think the newer generation. I saw a poll the other day that said 66% of Iranians do not consider themselves Muslim. That's two-thirds of the
Whoa.
population now saying we are done with Islam. Yeah. But that being said, one of the reasons that, look, I am curious by ideas. I studied politics in university and philosophy and stuff like that. I'm very curious by ideas. And I just think overall, Islam is a net negative to society. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have some positive aspects in it. Of course it does. But overall is a net negative. And if you look at all these new countries like Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the reason why they are improving now and the reason why they are coming to the 21st century thick and fast is because they are going past Islam. They are disregarding Islamic teachings, you know? And that's one of the reasons I speak about it. But the second reason, and the most important reason, because as I said, I'm very interested by debate, I'm very interested by ideas, and you can speak about anything. Like you can, debate capitalism versus communism, or you can debate Christianity, or you can debate Judaism. You can speak about anything, LGBTQ, feminism, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. You can speak about anything without your life being in danger. Right. But then Islam is the only thing you can't speak about. And I always found that very baffling. And, it's the fear that they put in you as a kid. Like, oh, if you say something about Islam or if you say something about Allah, then your punishment should be death. Or if you're a Muslim, you're not a Muslim anymore, you're an apostate, or you're a mufsid, then your punishment should be death. And I thought that was just so ridiculous. And the fact that so many people obey that. As I said, I'm quite a disagreeable person. So I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, sure. I'm not going to speak about Islam, even though it has verse after verse after verse of, violence and subjugating women, so on and so forth. And I was thinking, why can't we speak about it? Why can't we speak about it? And I saw a influx of radical Islamic people or Islamically brainwashed people immigrating to Europe. And I said, no. And, they're bringing that ideology with them. And no one dares to question them. And I was like, no, you have to question them, because over time, if we keep allowing these people, they will drag the whole of Europe down. They will drag the UK down. And that's one of the reasons I started speaking.
Well, like I noticed, like, the thing is, there are certain things, like, for example, with wokeism, for a very long time, like, if you even mention like LGBT stuff, you're screwed. If you even mention race stuff, you're screwed. It's only in like the last 5 years, I'd say, that there's been like a normalization of being able to fully express and just not be scared to say certain things. But like you're saying too, I think with Islam, it's like the response by the Muslim community as a whole is usually there's a real risk of violence actually being enacted on you. And we saw this, for example, with the guy in Sweden there, Salwan Momika. Okay, he's been burning Qurans, etc. And what's the response by the Muslim community after he gets killed by 5 guys that come into his apartment? They literally cheer. So even in terms of like the radical element to the moderate Muslim, there's also a problem, because it's almost like at the end of the day, let's say a radical guy like kills somebody, like for example in France, where they chop the guy's head off. The teacher there, what's his name? Samuel Paty. They chop his head off, execution, because he was showing cartoons to his classroom of Prophet Muhammad. Okay, but the problem is that the people that are quote unquote moderate will defend the radical guy by saying, "Oh well, he deserved it. He shouldn't have done that." And it's almost like the tribal element is just so profound that they're not able to condemn it. And that's why I keep saying that, like, even though I believe Islam and the West are incompatible, I also think that the Muslims that come from, let's say, the Middle East, there has to be an integration process, number one, and number two, they must be willing to condemn the extreme elements that emerge out of that. If that can't happen, then there's no like there's no unison there.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the problems because they fail their moral duty to condemn violence. And majority of Muslims and Islamic countries, they think it's okay for you to die if you say something bad about Prophet Muhammad or if you say something bad about Islam. And that's just a normal social contract that, oh,
Mm,
if you say anything bad about Islam or if you say anything bad about Muhammad, then you have it coming for you. And my question to these people is that, well, if you're on the side of the truth, if you truly believe that your religion is the last revelation, then why do you care about being questioned? As a matter of fact, you would want people to question you because over time you would be proven right. If
true.
anyone tries to cancel you or tries to kill you, just know they're not on the right side. Because actually, people, you speak about science. Scientists, they want to be proven wrong. They want to be proven wrong because, what's the scientific method? No matter what you do, as long as the conditions are the same, you will get the same results. And if you don't get the same results, please let us know. But then that's why the scientific method works, you know? So, unfortunately, but I think Islam and the
But
Middle East is going through its own renaissance now. I think more and more people are waking up, especially the younger generation, and they're saying, to hell with this, because they see Islam as an oppressive ideology. They know it oppresses them, and they are escaping this mental cage they have built for themselves in their heads. And I
yeah,
think that's a good thing.
I think also the internet puts everything laid out on the map where you don't have a choice but to defend your ideas. And when it comes down to it, there's certain arguments, obviously, where the Muslim community is going to struggle with, and that's why they need to censor, shut down, do whatever it takes to not let you speak on it.
Exactly. And what we have now is the unholy marriage of wokeism and Islamism. And you can see that in the pro Palestinian marches. You can see that in everything. And funnily enough, Islam and the woke mind virus, they have nothing in common. They couldn't be more different.
I'll give you an example. I'll give an example of that exactly. I used to go to to a gym once, and there was a few guys there, and I would post political content like I am doing right now, right? And so we would go back and forth on conservatism versus liberalism. Everything's good. And these guys who are Muslim would trash liberalism like crazy. They would say LGBT is stupid, feminism's retarded, etc. And then as soon as October 7th takes place, boom, they immediately ally with all these people. I said, bro, I understand like you hate Israel or you hate whatever the West, let's say, but why are you allying with people that you literally just told me you find disgusting? It's crazy.
They have no principles. And unfortunately, it's the brainwashing they receive as a child. Because imagine you're a child and your parents come to you and say, look, we are Muslims. We are part of the last religion. If you do not obey Allah, you will go to hell and you will burn forever. And if anyone comes to you and says Allah is not the God and Muhammad is not the prophet, don't listen to them because those people are sent by the devil. And if you decide to ever leave Islam, your punishment is death. Imagine you say that to a 6-year-old child. You traumatize them for the rest of their life, and then they cannot think properly after that because that's why I call it a brain virus, because
Yeah.
it limits your imagination, it limits your thinking, it limits your creativity. And fundamentally, what I'm trying to do is to free people from that mental cage, is to free people from that mental virus. I'm not trying to have a go, or I'm not trying to degrade Muslims. I'm not Islamophobic, even if there is such a thing, because there's no irrational fear of Islam. If you actually read the Quran, read the Hadiths, you realize that there is a completely rational reason to fear Islam. You just have to look at the life of Muhammad and look at history. But I'm not trying to degrade Muslims. This is, I think, maybe a misconception about me is I'm trying to free Muslims.
True. No, and also speaking about that other part you were saying about, let's say a child that's being raised and he comes across certain arguments or he comes across certain people that are pointing things out about Islam, even though rationally he understands what the person is telling him, why it doesn't make any sense rationally. but he's too afraid religiously to go to hell or whatever. So he needs to counter no matter what. He needs to trash the guy no matter what, reject, oppose. And I've seen that a lot throughout, like on the internet and stuff.
No, but I think things are changing. I'm optimistic about the future. I think that more people like myself need to speak about it, but also people like you. If you manage to educate yourself, I've done many videos on Islam where I go through the Quran, where I go through the Hadiths, where I give credit where credit is due, but also I don't give credit. And I look at the life of Muhammad, the type of person he was, why Islam came about in the first place. It was basically a manual for him to keep his fighters fit and to also fulfill his own sexual fantasies. And majority of the Quran came from the Torah. And people say he was illiterate, so he couldn't read or write. However, he manages to write a book, and they say, well, that is a miracle. But no, it's not. He probably got someone to translate the Torah for him and add a few bits. So if you read the Quran starts off relatively well. It's very similar to the Torah, and majority of the stories that are in the Bible also appear in the Quran. So all he done, I think, was to translate the stories, but also add his own twist to it. It's almost like a spin-off. And I think most of it was to conquer new lands, but also to keep his soldiers fit. Again, I'm not saying all of it is wrong. These are old wisdoms, and maybe at the time such a wisdom was needed. However, when you 1,400 years pass and you still want to live by those laws that was imposed by a bunch of, desertian Arabs in the 21st century, just doesn't work. And the fact that people still fall for that trap and they somehow think that is the correct way to live life, it just shows how brainwashed they are, but also it shows how obedient and maybe, I don't want to say stupid, but how cowardly people are, that they're not brave enough to question the things that was taught to them and was hammered into them as a child.
Yeah, no, I've seen an argument also about how Islam is kind of a mix of multiple different faiths into one, aggregated all together. You have elements of Judaism, Christianity, and then people are saying that there was a. Do you know about like Christianity with the Gnostics? There in the early days of Christianity, the Gnostics, which are like heretics, that was like one of the biggest conflicts between Christians, and a lot of the Gnostics were sent to the Middle East. And I've heard arguments of, okay, Prophet Muhammad takes all of that together, rallies all the Gnostics, rallies all the some Christians, rallies all the puts it all together into like one faith, and then he's able to a new faith, which is Islam, emerges out of that.
Well, it's funny you say that because I can add a caveat to that. Muhammad was married to this woman called Khadija. Khadija was 15 years older than him. So when he was 25, she was 40. Khadija was a very powerful woman. She was very rich. She could speak 5 languages. And my suspicion is that she is the one that's actually wrote the Quran and gave it to Muhammad, because she could speak Hebrew. She could speak 5 languages. So, if you don't want to believe in miracles, and I don't believe in miracles, I believe in miracles because I think life is a miracle, but I don't believe in a miracle that if someone is illiterate, they can't read or write, they can suddenly write a book. Of course, I don't believe that can happen. So the only other explanation is that someone that he knew or that was close to him managed to translate all these stories, and then she just told her, okay, add this, add that. And it's funny because Quran wasn't written in a night, because he always used to come up with new surahs. And it's funny because every time he went to a new town and he saw a beautiful woman, he said I got a message from God, I have to sleep with this woman. And people used to believe him because people used to think that he's the last messenger, but that's what he actually done.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, that's pretty interesting. I mean, I've heard arguments also. For example, Robert Spencer's writing a new book. I don't know if you know him. Robert Spencer, he like talks about his entire career is Islam. He has like one of his most popular books is called Critical Quran, but he's writing a new book, and I think it just released, where he actually starts to counter the claims that Prophet Muhammad was even a guy, or who exactly is this guy? And that's like a huge. That's another Pandora's box of.
I'm not sure whether, look, the thing is, maybe, as I said, I'm not religious. So even
Yeah.
in Jesus, I don't believe, you know.
Me too. I'm not religious. You said you're spiritual.
Yeah, I'm spiritual, yeah. I
Yeah.
believe, as I said, I believe in God, but not religion. I think spirituality is freedom, religion is oppression. I think that all these individuals, whether it is Jesus, Moses, I think they were extraordinary individuals. But I think what happened was back in the day, it had a snowballing effect. Like he said, oh, by the way, he split the sea, or, and then people used to make stories up. And back in the day, one thing you have to realize is that back in the day, everyone used to think they're a prophet. Everyone. You know how now everyone wants to think they're an entrepreneur? Back in
Yeah.
everyone thinks that they're a prophet. Everyone used to say, oh, I got a revelation from God and this and that. And maybe they had some revelations. And look, I done some research into this as well. For example, Moses, when he speaks about the burning bush, he's talking about DMT. And if you don't know what DMT is, this dimethyltryptamine, which is the most powerful psychedelic on planet Earth. And they actually found that tree and they realized it has very high quantities of DMT. And for those of you that don't know what DMT is what is produced in your brain when you're born, when you die, and when you take it synthetically, it takes you into a portal into where you see these amazing geometric shapes, and then you go into a different dimension and you get some lessons from that dimension. And it's not hallucinogenic, because if it was a hallucination, then everyone would see something different. But now we know that no, everyone actually sees the same thing. So it goes something deep down into our core unconscious, subconscious mind, that everyone sees the same thing. And there's actually now some studies being done in Imperial University where they managed to extend this DMT trip so they can plan or they can map out the DMC realm. And one of the reasons I believe in God is because I think there is a realm beyond this physical realm. I think our spirits come to this world to evolve, and they go somewhere else. And I think the DMT experience makes you touch that realm, or even if you take mushrooms or LSD. Anyway, that being said, I feel like these prophets actually used to be high. A lot of them, they used to be high
Yeah.
on DMT or mushrooms or whatever it may have been, and they may have got some revelations. They may have got some revelations, but at the time they couldn't say, okay, do this, do that, right? It's not like now, for example, oh, go and wash your hand because, the bacteria might make you ill, because they didn't know what bacteria was back then. So they said, okay, excuse me. So they said back then, okay, don't touch that. Is najes in Arabic. Najes means dirty. Najes meant like, okay, don't do that because you're going to get, but they didn't know. But they just said, okay, keep clean, don't touch certain things, don't do certain things, because if you don't do certain things, you will avoid certain diseases. But obviously they didn't have the scientific backing to support their claims, so they got God involved. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
said, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, for the longest period of time, even during that time, but before the monotheistic religions, okay, what did we do in terms of religion? We literally said, okay, look, the sun, it must be a god, because I can't explain it. The ocean, it must be Poseidon. Why is there a tsunami coming towards me? Zeus with like lightning and thunder. So the point I'm making is that when people don't understand something, the first thing they'll kind of default to is, okay, it must be the unknown. It must be a mystical thing. And I think that's what you see a lot with, in this case too. So I don't know.
100%. As I said, I think every single religion is true to some extent. Like the god of the seas, like you speak about Zeus, the god of gods. You speak about the god of the ocean, god of the mountains, god of fire, Aries, Scorpion. No, look, there is something to all these: astrology, numerology, every single religion or philosophy there is wisdom in it. And that's why I don't try to belittle religion, because I understand that in its own historical context, it had value and it added value. And it's one of the reasons why we're here now. It was all part of the human evolution. However,
Yeah.
we should keep evolving. We shouldn't be stuck in the past. And that's my whole point, because I see so many people that are stuck in the past in their way of thinking.
Well, one thing I also noticed too about because you're bringing in other religions into the debate, into the conversation, is that it seems like Islam also has like a list of things like with Sharia laws, where it's not just you and God or spirituality. It's also like there's a political manifestation into how you act. It seems like everything needs almost permission from the Quran or permission from some sort of revelation.
Yeah, look, the thing is, Islam is a very militant religion. And Islam, from its inception, was designed to govern. It wasn't designed to, be a spiritual thing and go to church and pray to God. No, no, no. It was a way of life, and it was a way to govern, and it was a way to go and conquer other lands, and it was a way to, set laws. Basically, Islam is a law enforced by God. That's what they said. Okay, you do this, you do that. If you don't do it, God will punish you, or if we catch you, we're going to punish you ourselves.
I mean, but the thing is between Islam and other Abrahamic faiths like Judaism, Christianity, I think Christianity, Judaism does also have certain rules imposed and what you can and can't do. But it's almost like Islam takes to another level. Every single move you do has to be by the book.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also, this is the problem. It's because Muslims believe that Islam is the word of God. They actually believe that. They're like, okay, every single word is the word of God, and no man can question the word of God.
Yeah.
That's why it's not allowed to go through its own renaissance. Because they're like, oh, who are you to say otherwise? The word of God is the same, and it will never change regarding the time.
Yeah, I was gonna talk. I was gonna talk about that actually next about Reformation or attempts at Reformation to try to basically maybe calm down Islam in terms of militarization, etc. Because the Christians also had that.
No, definitely. But then the thing is, there's a there's a huge difference between Christianity and Islam. And it's like Islam, its leader was a warrior. It was a person that killed a lot of people. It was a person that beheaded a lot of people. He was a person that married a lot of women and used Islam as a way to fulfill his own sexual fantasies. Jesus is a completely different character. He never killed anyone. He never done anything. And I think what happened
True.
was is that after Christianity and the Bible, certain individuals, such as the Crusaders, they used Christianity in a way to go to war. Now, that doesn't excuse Christianity. As I said, if you read the Old Testament, if you read the Torah, it actually says a lot of horrible, dark things. Same with Islam. But you don't, like, for example, in Islam says, do this, go to war, do jihad. In Christianity, it doesn't say that. And then it's up for interpretation. Like, some people might interpret it this way, or some people might interpret it that way. However, in Islam, there's no such thing as interpretation. It's pretty much more streamlined, narrow vision, tunnel vision book.
Well, I mean, there is some level of interpretation, and we could clearly see it with the different subsects of Islam. It's not unified. There's like Shia, Sunni, Sufi, subdivisions of Shia like crazy.
No, this is that, but that's another thing. Like Shia is, it's not about interpretation. It's about the difference between Shia and Sunnis is that after Muhammad, certain people believed that Ali is his successor and people have to follow Ali. But then certain sects, they were like, no, Muhammad was the only messenger, and after him there can be no other messenger. So the people that ended up following Ali became Shiites, and people that said, no, we're just going to follow what Muhammad said. And it was a guy called Yazid. It's like Islamic history. They ended up becoming Sunni. So, and then after Ali, he went to his son Hassan, then Hussein, then Reza, then Mahdi, and all these different imams that came after Muhammad. And Shiites believe that the 13th Imam, which is Imam Mahdi, will come. The same way the Christians believe that Jesus will come back one day.
The Sunnis the Sunnis don't believe that the Mahdi will come. Will come. Okay, so it's just Shia.
Yeah, the Mahdi is for the Shiites. They just, oh, and this is another reason why Muhammad was a charlatan, is because he said that, oh, on the day of judgment, it's not me that's going to come back, it's going to be Jesus Christ. So you say that you're the last messenger, yet you say that you're not going to be the one that comes back on the day of judgment. So who's the last
Discount.
messenger then? So he knew he wasn't a prophet. This is my point. He knew he wasn't a prophet. So just in case there was an off chance of judgment day, he was like, oh, no, 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 it's not going to be me. It's going to be Jesus Christ. So that's why he was a charlatan.
Yeah, but getting back to the Shia thing, but the Shias also have like subdivisions, right? It's not all one. They have like Alevi, they have Ismaili, they have all kinds of subsects.
Oh, yeah, 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 they do. But I think that's very, it's very, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's very rare. Like, I know
Okay.
Ismail, but it's I think to do more with nation. Like, for example, Ismailis are more from Turkmenistan, for example. It's just like, they evolved, but in a weird way. Like, look, in Christianity, you have Catholic, you have Protestant, and then you have the Orthodox, yeah? You can
Yeah.
say there's subsects within those, but
Yeah.
is there really? There isn't. So there's like three main ones, and then, we can believe whatever you want to believe.
I mean, there's subsects in the Protestant thing, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but it's just like, it's all covered on the Protestant, basically. It's like, it's one of those things you wouldn't say.
so there's not a lot of division between
For example, like, what's the one in America that's very popular?
Mormons.
Mormonism. Yeah, that's like a made up thing, right? They just say, oh, Jesus is going to come back in America. Like, someone just made that up and a bunch of idiots just believe that?
Some guy basically just he just self-declared himself as like the new prophet. I forgot his name, and that's pretty much how it went. And he's like the center of Mormonism.
Right, right. No, I mean,
Dave Smith or something.
I just think in general, I know I speak about Islam, or maybe because I have the authority to speak about Islam because I come from a Muslim background. I just think all religion is ridiculous. And the difference between Christianity and the Judaism is that they were allowed to go through their own renaissance, which happened 200 or 300 years ago. Islam still needs to go through its own renaissance, right? And it's going through it right now. But then, as I said, the problem is it's a very rigid religion, it's a very militant religion, and its followers believe that it's the word of God. So you can't go through a renaissance. And that is a problem. And the more we question it, the more we criticize it, the more we point out why it's bad for society and how societies that follow it are left behind, the more people's minds open and the more we will move forward.
That was one of my. And I'll get to the next topics like after this. That was one of my big contentions also in terms of Islam. It's these people are all telling me that this is the one true faith, and it yields the best return in terms of society and how things should be organized. But then you take a look at all the countries that implement to a certain level of Sharia, 50%, 60%, 80%, and it's not even close. It's not even close to like let's say non-Islamic countries. And in my brain, in my brain, people that are Muslim, I just ask them the question like, you say it's the best, but I just look at the results. I just look at what it looks like.
Well, this I made a point about this in one of the videos, is where Douglas Murray was on the Valuetainment Network with Patrick the Bet David. And he asked the question, he was like, if you're the last revelation, then why doesn't your societies work? Think about it. If you're the last revelation, if you're the last religion from God, you won theologically, you're the last bearers of the message. So why doesn't your societies work? And not as a matter of not why your societies don't work. Why is it that every single society that follows Islam goes backwards? So if you're not the last, and that's why the Islamic societies are so vulnerable to conspiracy theories, because they think to themselves, well, Islam is clearly not the problem. The reason why we're behind is because of America, or is because of
Yeah.
or is because of whoever, so they cannot think straight. They're like, no, maybe the issue is from within.
They'll say that all the countries that are Islamically run is because of, let's say, Western colonialism or American interventionism. But there's plenty of countries that have none of that stuff, and they're still bad. And there's plenty of countries that have basically past any sort of relationship to the West, and they're still bad. So at what point do you kind of wake up?
Yeah, as I said, the problem is that unfortunately within Islamic societies you're not allowed to talk. There is no freedom of speech. Maybe a lot of people believe what we're saying, or they deep down they agree with us, but they're scared to come out and say it. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to break, is that I'm trying to break that taboo, that it's okay to question things and it's okay to question Islam. Don't be scared, come forward, especially for the ones that are live outside of Islamic countries. What do you have to fear? All right, cool, this guy, he burnt the Quran, he went a little bit far, he was provocating, but in general you're allowed to have a debate. Look, I say that in society, I think Jordan Peterson says this, is that society goes downhill when a lot of good men close their mouth, keep their mouth shut. They don't say things that they need to say. And they say, when you have something to say, silence is a lie, right? When you have something to say, silence is a lie. So that's my ambition. I'm trying to open people's minds. But again, I want to reiterate, I speak about everything. I don't just
Yeah.
speak about Islam. Islam is
Yeah. Yeah.
one, maybe 10%. I speak about everything, every single issue. You've seen
Yeah.
my videos, whatever the news of the day is, whether it is politics, psychology, philosophy, debate, social issues, whatever it is, music, film. I'm a person that's interested by everything and I have my own opinion on everything. So I don't want to be pigeonholed into that thing
Right.
of, oh, this guy just speaks about Islam, even though I'm the most famous for that.
Yeah. So okay. So let's actually move on from that for a bit. I wanted to get a little bit in. Okay, two things. Number one, Iranian society, the Iranian regime, the future of Iran. Maybe talk a little bit about Pahlavi, the monarchist, and then we'll move towards just the overall Donald Trump, Western interventionism into the Middle East, the different foreign policies that are involved there. Maybe talk a little bit about Syria, Israel, Palestine, etc. But maybe let's just jump straight into like Iran. For example, I've seen a video where Iran, the supreme leader, is the one that currently holds the country together. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. He says there's different segments in Iran, different factions, different races or ethnicities, sorry. And Islam is the guy that holds it all together. But the thing is, he's old now. So what happens when he dies? Which could be in like 5 years.
Well, I think he's got his son lined up. But I think the Islamic Republic of Iran will fall very soon. And the reason for that is twofold. The first reason is that the people in Iran are fed up with the Islamic Republic. I can confidently say 80% of the Iranian population are fed up. But
That's not just that's not just Western propaganda.
no, no, no. No, 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 no. I mean, you can
Okay.
go to Iran and find out for yourself. Like people like swear at the government and swear at. I can confidently say 80% of the population is against the Islamic Republic. And as I said, tens of millions of Iranians have fled Iran, me being one of them. Tens of millions. I think it's like maybe 20 million people. You go to America, millions of Persians. You go to Canada, millions of Persians. You go to Europe, millions of Persians. These people had to escape somehow. So the fact that everyone's escaping the country is showing you something. And those are the people that could escape. A lot of people don't have the means, they don't have the money, because
True.
you need to get a visa. These people can't escape. That being said, Iran is absolutely beautiful. But despite how beautiful it is, because of the government, which is a dictatorship, something similar to North Korea, people don't have freedom of speech. So, and when they come out and protest, they get hanged, they get shot, they get killed, they get tortured, they get thrown in prison. So people are scared to come out and protest, right? Even though they've done it hundreds of times, every single time the government basically oppresses them and kills off the protest after a few. Like once they start killing people and start like machine gunning people in the street, the people are like, oh shit, and then it goes away for 2 or 3 years and then people come back out again. So I think the Islamic Republic has reached a point where they are very weak. Why? Because all their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, are decimated. Their best friend in the region, Bashar al-Assad, has fled Syria.
True. Big one.
Israel has taken out their air defense system. and Trump will be putting ultimate sanctions and ultimate pressure on them. So if you combine those two factors, a angry population combined with maximum international pressure, it's like a pressure cooker. It's almost a matter of time before the regime collapses. As you said, Khamenei is getting older. He's the one that's holding this whole thing together, right?
The current president, Pezeshkian,
He's the
he,
president. He's not the
he
Ayatollah.
yeah, he's not Toyota. He seems to be kind of pushing back a little bit on the Islamic stuff, or is that garbage?
Well, let me tell you something. That's the trick that they've been using. Look, every time the Islamic Republic of Iran is in a vulnerable position, what they do is that they bring like a liberal, progressive type looking guy so they can trick the West. They done the same thing with Obama, and that's why Obama agreed to sign the nuclear deal back in 2015. However, when he signed the nuclear deal, he gave Iran $150 billion in cash, and they ended up using that money to strengthen the Islamic Brotherhood. So they basically, and they say, oh, well, why did Trump come out of the Iran nuclear deal? Well, because they didn't follow, they said, okay, fine, we'll stop making a nuclear bomb. But then they spend that money on other military bases, going and taking over Iraq, Syria, giving money to Hezbollah, giving.
Biden also did a hostage deal. He also did a hostage deal. He wanted to have 5 Americans back for 60 prisoners, and he also gave the Iranian regime billions of dollars. This is like last year.
Yes, yes. Like just before the whole Hamas thing happened, like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he done this, and then straight away we have Hamas. So I think, look, the Middle East in general will do better if the Islamic Republic. And look, another thing I wanted to tell you: the Arabs hate the Islamic Republic. Saudi Arabia hates the Islamic Republic. United Arab Emirates, the Emiratis, the Qataris, they all hate the Islamic Republic. And if there is a war, the Saudis will be back in Israel, believe it or not. Because when Iran shot rockets towards Israel, half the rockets were struck in the air by Saudis to protect Israel. So that's why I mean Saudis and Mohammed bin Salman are very forward thinking. They might not come out and say it, but deep down what they want is peace with Israel.
People
Will be signed very soon.
people in the axis of resistance, they doubt that Mohammed bin Salman is even Muslim, and they trash him nonstop for being a Zionist puppet, whatever.
Yeah, but they're talking shit. Look at the end of the day, as I said, the proof is in the pudding. Look at Dubai. Look at Qatar. Look at what they've done. Look at what they built. Look at what Saudi is building. Isn't it funny? Every time you have a progressive, forward-thinking leader, your country changes for the better. What do you want Saudi to be? To be another terrorist state like Islamic Republic? Or what do you want him to be? Like Hamas, like Hezbollah? Yeah, he's not a real Muslim. And what?
No, I think yeah,
He might not be. Well, this is the thing. Mohammed bin Salman, look, imagine you're him, yeah? You're a smart guy. You're like the crown prince. You might believe in Islam and you might believe in Muhammad, but deep down in your heart, you know, like, dude, this doesn't work. Like, if I want to take my country to the next level, I can't be like the Houthis and like the Hamas, like Hezbollah. I can't. And this is the realization that they've made. They're like,
Yep.
okay. And he come out and said on state TV that if we want to come to the 21st century, we can't be living by rules once set 1,400 years ago. He's actually come out and said
Whoa.
it. He's actually come out and said it live on TV. So it just shows you he deep down in his heart of hearts, even though he can't, and the reason why he can't come out and say it like more aggressively is because he knows like
Yep.
still a substantial amount of his population are very Islamic and Muslim. So he doesn't want to piss off his own people.
Yep.
But his actions suggest otherwise. And they always say, don't look at what someone says, look at what someone does.
Well, I mean, it's so funny because the axis of resistance basically trash him, and they'll trash like all the stuff he does related to Israel. But at the same time, they always use Saudi or the UAE as like an exemplary society of what Islam looks like. So they hate it, but at the same time they like it.
Yeah, the thing is, everything started to change when Mohammed bin Salman came to power back in 2018, when he started changing everything, you know? And now it's becoming an example. It's look, it's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
Still, they've got their own flaws. Every society got their own flaws, but they're definitely on the right track. And I think people like Mohammed bin Salman, Netanyahu are the ones that will cause or have already caused this catalyst for the renaissance of Islam. Because the more people see it, they're like, okay, well, at the end of the day, we want to live in prosperity. We want to live in peace. We don't want to be living in tunnels like Hamas. We
Yeah.
don't want to be bombed. We don't want to be living with suicide bombers. We don't want to cover head to toe. Like, what the fuck? And they look at places like Dubai and Saudi, like, you know what? As a matter of fact, that's a better way of living. And I think that will kickstart this evolution within Middle East, and that has already begun to go to a better future.
That's what I'm saying. I think the internet is like a contributor to like two things, not just the apostasy of the avalanche of apostasy, let's say, but also on full display, you have all the different societies that exist that are thriving, that are doing well, that are not going by the book, by your book. So you need to like kind of reevaluate, and then you have places like Afghanistan, Iran, still trying to hold on as much as possible.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. So, yeah, man, I just think, look, I always say, future is bright, but the paranoid are the only ones that survive. I think Patrick Bet David is the one that says that. I truly believe that future is bright. However, you need to be paranoid because, if you're not paranoid enough, there's always someone around the corner that will fuck you up or some ideology or something.
it's like people right now in the United States that are basically celebrating wokeism is dead. It's paused, but people in universities, first of all, there's still a large population that are still quote unquote woke. It didn't just disappear from their brain just because Trump won. And number two, the source of the ideas is the universities, and they're still teaching. And there's a new batch of people coming in, young people, 18, 17, coming in, indoctrinate. So it's not over. It's a perpetual kind of like fight, ideological fight that needs to be constantly combated. Same thing with Islam.
Exactly. No, I totally agree with you. Because look, what I'm saying now, I feel like we won the uphill battle. We made it to the top of the mountain somehow. And I think Trump winning was a tipping point. So now we still have a battle, but the battle is mostly downhill. So now I
Oh yeah.
think we have the upper hand. Before, 4 or 5 years ago, they used to have an upper hand on us, but then we ended up winning. I think the hardest part of the battle, at least when it comes to wokeism, the hardest part of the battle is won, even though we still have a long way to go. But Islam, I'm not sure. Islam, maybe we're still on an uphill battle, but we're making
What
progress.
I was gonna make another point about what do you think about what's happening in the UK right now with Labour, and you have Tommy Robinson in prison, and you have the grooming gang scandal that's been that basically Elon Musk just shed a huge light on.
Look, we have a government in which they're a virtue signaling woke government, something similar to Justin Trudeau or something similar to Joe Biden. And they care more about coming across virtuous rather than being virtuous, or they care more about coming across moral rather than being moral. And again, it's the same narrative that the Biden administration and Trudeau was playing. So one example is the grooming gangs. When Tommy Robinson exposed the grooming gangs, they called him Islamophobic instead of going and investigating it. And then 10 or 15 years later, hundreds of girls, thousands of girls abused later. They're like, oh, right, maybe Tommy Robinson was right. But then originally, back in 09, 010, when he was telling you, he was like, look, there are grooming gangs, there are Pakistani, and there are Muslims. They called him a racist and an Islamophobe. So instead of going after the problem, they went after people speaking about the problem. Let
Yeah.
me repeat that one more time. Instead of going after the root cause of the problem, they go after people speaking about the problem and they label them sexist, racist. And that's the exact same thing that happened to Donald Trump. They called him a racist when he was talking about the southern border. They called him a
Yeah.
sexist when he said, oh, women or like a transphobe, or women can't compete in female sports, or a sexist, oh, he used to beat women up, oh, he's a misogynist, blah 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 blah. I just don't think people buy it anymore. People just don't buy that anymore, you know. However, I think America is always 3 or 4 years ahead of us. I think the change you see
Mm.
now in America will soon happen in the UK within the next 2 3 3 4 years max. It will happen here as well because reform is now leading.
It's the same. It's the same as Canada. That's why I care so much about the United States, because they have an actual quote unquote right wing opposition that's strong enough. Versus Canada, it's everybody's left wing. Everybody's agreeing. They're all together. Pierre Poilievre. Yeah, he's making a resurgence. But I heard a lot of people talk about this too. They said that even liberals that are ready to vote for him, deep down, if you take all of the issues one by one, they're still liberal. It's just that right now they see,
But then look, let me just add a caveat to this. I think there's a difference between being a liberal and being a left winger. What do I mean by that? I'm an old school liberal. What
yeah. Well, I meant liberal like in an American like terminology, not liberal.
is changed in America, it's also changed. So I think there's a huge difference between being a liberal and a left winger. A liberal, a classical liberal, believes in freedom of speech, believes in freedom of expression. These are core liberal values. And by that yardstick, I am a liberal. Okay? These left wingers, they're nothing but liberals because all they're about is cancel culture and feeling based society, and whatever you say we don't agree with, we're going to cancel you. So I don't know if you've studied politics or if you know about the graph of
Yeah,
the. So there is like, for example, let's say there's a graph like this: left, right, libertarian, authoritarian. What we have now is left wing authoritarian. These are left wing authoritarians. And now what we have are right wing libertarians. So it's kind of swapped because back in the 1960s, the liberals used to be the ones that say, no, we should have freedom of speech. We should, express ourselves. Not everyone is the same, blah, blah, blah. And I agree with that kind of liberalism. By that definition, I'm a liberal. But in this
yeah,
current day and age, in this current environment, because the political spectrum around me has shifted, I come across as a right winger, even though I might not be. Yeah, in some aspects, I'm a conservative. In some aspects, yeah. But in some other aspects, I'm a liberal. But it's ironic because now right wing are associated with free speech. Whereas 40, 50 years ago, it was the left wing that were associated with free speech. So you see the difference. It's almost like the parties almost swapped. And the best example of that is Elon Musk. Elon Musk used to be a Democrat. Now
yeah.
he's a Republican. Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat. Now is a Republican.
RFK
RFK
Jr.
Jr. Yeah, RFK Jr., Democrat, now Republican. So it just shows you a lot of people that used to be on this other side have swapped teams, not because they betrayed their team, but because their team betrayed them.
Yeah, the like we say, the Overton window shifted left so far left that people that are now even moderate Democrats of 1980s are right wing, which is crazy. But what do you think about Reform UK in the United Kingdom? What do you think about Nigel Farage?
Chance this country has.
Because you
I've
did
actually done a
you
little bit of work with them, with Nigel Farage and in communication strategy. And I think this is the best this country can offer in this moment in time. They're very similar to MAGA Republicans, same sort of policies, getting rid of woke mind virus, controlling illegal and legal migration,
Yep.
doing better with the economy, more entrepreneurship spirit, cutting the government spending, slimming the government in general, you know, what's the word? Inspiring more entrepreneurs, giving, less taxes,
Yep.
changing the tax brackets, all these things, bringing investment from foreign countries, pretty much what America is doing right now.
The conservatives in the UK, they basically got murked. People were it's similar to Canada where the last election, the conservative leader basically caved to the center because politically it's viable. If the whole population is more left from you and you're like a radical capitalist, you're just never going to win no matter what. So what do? You look at the polls, you look at the sentiment.
And I disagree with that because I actually don't think there's a left and a right, as I said earlier. I think now is the establishment versus the populist. So people like Justin Trudeau are the establishment, old way of thinking, establishment politicians. Yeah, everything. Labor and conservative, they're both establishment politicians. The Democrats, Biden, establishment. Obama, establishment. Clinton, establishment. Who's the populist here? Donald Trump. He's like the man of the people, more the populist saying things. And, I don't even think like Donald Trump is a crazy conservative at all. That's why they
Yep.
call them MAGA Republicans. Like, if you look at his life, he used to donate money to the Democrats all his life. Some Republicans as well, So and now Nigel Farage, yeah, in some aspects he could be a right winger in terms of immigration, in terms of economy, but in other aspects he's a liberal. So I would say he's a populist. So free speech, again, as I said, that's a liberal value. But now that's being adapted by. So I think now the powers that are, and there was since World War II, are changing. The world is changing. We saw it with Brexit, even leaving the European Union. Trump leaving a World Health Organization, the United Nations, losing its purpose, NATO even. All these organizations are losing their power, and these are establishment organizations, establishment politicians, and we have a new wave of populist politicians, charismatic like Trump, like Farage, all over Germany, France. They all have their own, but this is the problem. The media calls them far right. The media calls them far right to discredit them.
Yeah.
I don't think Trump is far right. I don't think Farage is far, but that's what the media puts in people's heads. They're like, oh, they're far right, they're racist. Don't vote for them.
But that's why it's unbelievable because it's like, for example, even in the United States with Trump, convictions, lawsuits, everything, even with all of the stuff that's going on with him, people still vote for him in mass with popular vote than what the left is saying. So there's a diminishing return when you constantly abuse the word far right or alt right or fascist. And don't get me started. Don't get me started on the actual far right that rises out of that, because that's a problem too. You especially you especially see it now with the woke right. Have you heard of the term the woke right? Like James Lindsay talks about it a lot. Yeah, there's Tucker Carlson, and then there's like further right, like Keith Woods, Jake Shields, Nick Fuentes, Groypers, etc.
Right. So like it's a very good topic to speak about actually. Look, we have the far left or the woke left, and now we have something called the woke right. And these people, unfortunately, they try to distort history and they try to cancel those that don't believe in them. And I saw Tucker Carlson the other day. I'm a big fan of Tucker Carlson, but I was kind of disappointed in him because I think he's embracing the woke right. Because the problem I have with the right or the woke right is that they are so vulnerable to conspiracy theories. So every single conspiracy theory there is, they believe in it. I'm not saying conspiracy theories are not true, like some of them are. But then some people blindly believe every single conspiracy theory, like Alex Jones or like Tucker Carlson.
Okay, so here's what I want to say, and the point you're making is super important because I see it everywhere. If the establishment lied about COVID, or the establishment lies in general, then we go the other way. Whatever that may be, that the rabbit hole that you go down, that contrarian rabbit hole you go down, could be unbelievable. But now we could take it a step further, and that's what we're seeing right now with the woke right, with World War II. They say if they lied about COVID, then what if they're lying about history? For 1,000 years, all of it is a lie. All of it is bullshit. The opposite is true by default.
Yeah, but that's again goes back to my point that I made that unfortunately a lot of people in society, they think in black and white terms. And what do I mean by that is that they don't realize that life is 50 shades of gray. Two things can be true at the same time. It doesn't
True.
mean like this person bad, this person good. this person has his own qualities, that person has his own qualities, and it's all to do with percentage. Like, do I like this person 99%, or do I like this person 80%, or do I agree with this person 50%? It's all relative and it's all percentage wise, right? And the problem with the conspiratorial right or the woke right is that, well, the government is totally corrupt. Like, they don't even have an ounce of good in them, and they lie about everything, and you should believe every single conspiracy theory, and they lie to you about every single thing. They lie to you about history, and that is the woke right.
But
Whereas the woke left is different, it's like in a different way. But have you heard of the shoe horse theory? The shoe horse theory. So it shows that extreme of either end are actually more similar to each other. You understand? So it's called the shoe, like where a shoe horse is, how a shoe horse is, horseshoe, sorry, like a horseshoe
theory.
How it's shaped. So the extreme left and the extreme right are actually very, very similar. And you can see it. Look, for example, you can see it in the pro-Palestinian marches, right? They're supposed to be the woke left, the far left, but then there's some people doing the High Hitler in the protest, and I'm like, well, that's quite far right of you, and they're doing it as a far left. I mean, like, what the fuck? So that's exactly where lines are blurred.
The thing is, the woke right is not just a bunch of people that believe in conspiracies. The woke right is the reason why they say woke is because they embrace a lot of ideas by the whole woke movement. So the woke right is basically identitarian. They believe in identity politics, white people, etc., versus other races. They're hyper collectivists. They reject capitalism and liberalism like crazy. They like authoritarianism, and they often use religion for a lot of the arguments that they make.
That's exactly what I've seen. Like, for example, they are identity politics. They're like, oh, we shouldn't be playing identity politics. We should go back to our Christian roots, and we should be, or everyone should be white. I'm like, dude, that's kind of identity politics.
Yeah.
Like, if you say, we have to live by Christian values, or everyone should be white in our society, or everyone should, I'm like, dude, that is identity politics. You're just a different kind. The other extreme is, oh, everyone is the same and everyone is equal and we should accept everyone. And the other extreme is, oh no, everyone should be white and we should live in a Christian society and we should have an authoritarian leader that enforces that.
Have you seen the since October 7th, the woke right, quote unquote, they've tried at one point to ally with the Muslims. They literally said it. The Muslim Christian unity against whatever, the Zionists, the Jews, the woke, etc. And then quickly, very fast, it just broke down because there's no actual unification there. Realistically, you had guys like, for example, Sneeko and Nick Fuentes, and then very quickly it kind of broke down. So,
no, it's ridiculous, man. Unfortunately, as I said, a sane person sees value in everything, takes lessons from everything, but doesn't put themselves in a box. And that goes to our first beginning of the conversation. Why am I not a religious person? Because I don't put myself in a box. I try to learn from every religion. I try to be a spiritual person. I try to be a good person. Once you start putting yourself in a box of Christianity or Islam or any ideology, woke right, woke left, you start to see the world from that prism, right? And you try to fit all the facts to fit that prism and those glasses you are wearing. Whereas if you take a step back, you take your glasses off, you see that life is dynamic and you start seeing reality for what it is rather than what you constructed in your head. Life is dynamic.
I mean, it's not wrong to have principles that you kind of abide by, but you have to be open enough to be able to understand other ideas that exist out there, and not everything is by your prism. They don't see the world the same way as you. They have a different ideology altogether, and you need to like actually kind of nuance and kind of break it down. But I don't know, the woke right to me, I think the next great battle that's going to take place is going to be between this woke right thing and the constitutional right or the classical liberal. I think that's going to be the biggest battle. Because these guys are doing similar to the left. They're attempting at all costs to gain power. They don't care who you are. They'll destroy you in 2 seconds.
Honestly, I've got to say, I lost a lot of respect for Tucker Carlson for two reasons. First reason is that he's so adamant that Russia is in the right, and look, Russia has a point. But if you're smart enough, you realize that Putin is just using that as an excuse to go and invade Ukraine, and that's because he wants to restore the Soviet Union. I'm not saying he's going to go and invade all of Europe. I'm not saying that. And also to say Churchill was, a villain in World War II. He's the one that defeated the Nazis. And what's he talking about? Like, what the fuck? And when I saw that, I was like, this guy is part of the woke right now. He's been brainwashed. And look,
In my opinion, I think
the thing, if you pick teams, and you're adamant that your team is on the right, and you're willing to go as far as to prove that your team is right, you're a moron. And I lost a lot of respect for him because I couldn't see that analytical thinking in him to say, okay, well, Churchill done what he had to do. He done what he had to do. He had to go and make alliances with the Soviet Union. He had to go and make alliances in order to beat Hitler. And at the time, they decided that Hitler is the biggest villain, right? And if he didn't ally with the Soviet Union, Hitler could have never been defeated. But then to turn that around and say, well, because he allied with the Soviet Union, then he must be a bad person because he, helped the dictator. And Zelensky, I don't like Zelensky. I just told you, I don't like Zelensky. I find him a little bit corrupt. I think he stole a lot of money. He's the biggest beggar or the biggest salesman of all time. I don't think the war in Ukraine should have ever started. But again, I have that nuance. I'm like, okay, Zelensky is right on certain aspects and Putin is right on other aspects. And then it basically means on the scale, which one are you going to back? Same with Israel and Palestine. I support more Israel, but that doesn't mean every single thing that they've done is correct. And that doesn't mean every single Palestinian is evil. It's again about the scale. And overall, I think with the whole Ukraine and Russia thing, I think Russia will take over the land that they've already taken. And probably Ukraine is going to join NATO or some other security council, or they're going to get given nukes to them. Something like that's going to happen. I think Trump's going to make the deal in terms of Israel, Palestine.
I don't think Russia is ever going to accept Ukraine being NATO ever.
And that's the deal they have to take, because then they'll say, okay, well, give their land back then. So if Putin wants to keep the land that he's already taken, I don't think something will happen. Probably not NATO, but then some sort of other security alliance that's not NATO. Or they will give back the nukes, because Ukraine used to have 5 nukes that they gave to Russia.
That's what Zelensky is asking. He's like, give us nukes, we'll be good.
Exactly. I think something will happen. Something will happen in terms of Israel, Palestine. I think Israel, we're going to take over the Gaza Strip.
Trump said he's going to take it.
Yeah, I think you should. I don't think, and I made a video about it today. First reason is that, well, Gaza is rubbles now. It's just full of old, broken down buildings with no electricity, no water, nothing. Why are you going to go back to a torn down building? Like, what are you going to do there? If I was a Palestinian, I would be like, can I go to Egypt, please? Or can I go to Turkey or Jordan? I don't want to go back to Gaza. Like, what the fuck? It's an open air prison, as you said. And if you actually had a genocide committed against you, then why do you want to go back to a place where genocide was being committed? Like, for example, the Jews in Germany, when they were offered to leave Germany after World War II, they all left, even though there was no threat of Hitler anymore, but because they didn't want to stay in that country that tried to commit genocide, and they all went to Israel or America. So if and I don't believe in the genocide, by the way, I think that's a contradiction in terms. I just think
me neither.
No. I just think if you truly just leave, go to a different part of the world, go to Egypt, and the funny thing is, the neighboring countries, none of them want them, which is ironic. I thought you're the Muslim Brotherhood, and a Muslim should always look after each other. But the Egyptians don't want them, Jordanians don't want them. But at the end of the day, I think Israel is going to take over the Gaza Strip, and I think over time they will normalize relations with Saudi, with hopefully, if the Islamic Republic of Iran falls, we can have something called the Cyrus Accords, and I think that will happen in the next 2 to 4 years.
Whoa, that's a big.
Well, we shall look. We've hit the 115 mark. I think we should close on that prediction. We will see, and I think this video is going to stand the test of time. Let's see. I hope it gets a lot of views one day.
I'll see you again in a few years, and then we'll see if it comes to fruition. All right, buddy.